In this next slide, we're going to introduce another of the prophetic established doctrines of the Bible that really prove the existence of God and his hand in the writing of the Bible. And that is the nation of Israel. If you look at the chart or the slide here, you're going to see, first of all, on the left-hand side, a globe of the world. And I'm sure that you've looked closely at globes before. But here we have a close-up on the right of a postage stamp right next to that little nation called Israel. And the point of this slide is to show you how small this nation is. As a matter of fact, you're going to have trouble seeing the nation of Israel on this slide in spite of the fact that I've blown it up to the degree that I have. My postage stamp, which is a normal 2-cent stamp, the same size as a regular first-class stamp, is about 5 times larger than the nation of Israel on this globe. And the fact that this nation is still in existence today and that there are a people called Israelis is astounding. One of the reasons I believe that we're in the last days is because of what's happening in the nation of Israel and in the land of Israel. So Israel is one of those things that attest and witness to the existence of God, because in prophecy, God established this nation some 4,000 years ago with a man named Abraham. And you're going to find that if you start looking at the details of what God has said about Israel, as we're going to do, that it gets so exciting when you're thinking in terms of prophecy, because it gives us a lot of examples of what God said beforehand and how it was fulfilled, giving us clear patterns of how prophecy works. All right, Israel. The next slide is showing you a map on the right-hand side there of the nation of Israel. That same land area is what God pointed out to a man named Abram 4,000 plus years ago and said, hey, come here, leave your family, and I'm going to show you the land that I'm going to give your descendants. And then he had him come to the land at that time of Palestine or Canaan, and he let him go up and down the land and told him, this is going to be the country, the land that I'm giving to your people. What other nation has had this kind of testimony that God gave them their land and that they hung on to it or they have it here now 4,000 years later? Israel did not hang on to their land during that period of time. For much of that time, they didn't have that land. But today, right now, for some reason, Israel has this land 4,000 years later. That's why I look up at the sky and look for the return of the Lord Jesus every time I get a chance, because I believe this fact that we're looking at a people who now have their land back after 4,000 years, this people has something happening in their ranks that we need to pay attention to. That's Bible prophecy. All right, in this next slide, what else has happened with Israel that is so significant when it comes to Bible prophecy? Well, God foretold to Abraham that his people would be slaves in Egypt for 400 years. And then he would set them free and bring them back to the land. That was a prophecy that he gave to Abraham. Here it is. Let me read it to you. He didn't specify Egypt, but he said a nation. And we know now that it was Egypt. Genesis 15, 12 through 15. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated 400 years. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your fathers in peace and be buried at a good old age. This is a prophecy. This is how prophecy works. Did it happen exactly the way God said, or was this symbolic or an analogy to what was going to happen? No, it's not an analogy. It is not symbolic. It is literally what happened. This happened before, this prophecy happened at the time of Abraham, and of course way before Moses, 400 or 500 years before Moses. So what we have here is that we have a prophecy about what was going to happen before Joseph was ever sold to the land of Egypt, and before he became the ruler there to bring all of Israel, his family, his father and his brothers, to that land. So in Bible prophecy, here is an example of knowing how it was before the prophecy took place, and then looking at the story in Exodus and watching how God troubled the land of Egypt, as he said here, that he was going to punish the nation that enslaved them. What did he do? There was 10 plagues that in the end, one of every household, the oldest son of every household, died the night that God delivered Israel out of Egypt. So he did exactly what he said he would do. And this is how prophecy works. Don't let people turn Bible prophecy into symbols in your mind and fool you. There is too many prophecies in the Bible that have given us exactly the pattern of how God intends to use prophecy to foretell the literal future with literal words now or in the past. Now we're going to look at slide C. God warned Israel ahead of time that he would cast them back out of their land if they followed the false religious practices of the people who lived in Israel before them. So here we go. God gets Israel together and he tells them, I'm going to bless you if you follow me, but I'm going to curse you if you don't follow me. As a matter of fact, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 19 and 20, we can read it ourselves here. If you ever forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and worship and bow down to them, I testify against you today that you will surely be destroyed. Like the nations the Lord destroyed before you, that's those nations that lived in the land of Israel before it was the land of Israel, so you will be destroyed for not obeying the Lord your God. When you look at the history of Israel, you see the movies that is made of them. It is a heartbreaking thing to watch the horror that happened to that nation over and over again. And if you ask yourself, like I do when I watch those things, why? How did this happen from a people that were God's chosen people? Here's the answer right here. They were destroyed for not obeying the Lord their God and not keeping his covenant. So God warned them this was going to happen. And now we look back. We're 4,000 years later. And we look back and we see over and over exactly what God foretold has happened. Voila. That's prophecy fulfilled. And that's another of that 50% of prophecies that God foretold in the past that has already come to pass.